that once you allow yourself to make bad art, you just make. You just make for the joy of it. In my previous video, I promised that the next video would be about making bad art and why that's so important and why that is such an incredibly freeing experience. So here we are to get into the topic of making bad art. Something that really held me back from creating art as an adult was this feeling that it had to be really good. Because I had been making art since I was very young and I studied art in university, and people had told me that I was a good artist when I was younger, it felt like if I was going to make art as an adult, then it had to look a certain way. It had to be a certain way. And that pressure kept me from creating. I don't know if you've heard this slogan. It's spouted sometimes in 12-step programs about perfectionism, but it's perfectionism leads to procrastination, leads to paralysis. And I was really stuck in that because I would sometimes think about projects or have ideas and then not even begin them because already it felt like something too big for me to take on, or like I couldn't possibly execute it to the vision that I had in my mind. So why even bother taking that step? And this held me back for years and years and years from having any kind of creative practice in my life or any consistent creative practice in my life. And then, as I also shared in the last video, I moved to a new city. I took an art class, and it was a collage class, and that was a great experience for many reasons, but one of them being that collage is can be a very freeing art form if you let yourself just kind of go with the flow and have this kind of communication with the piece that you're creating to allow yourself to just follow what feels right and not be too concerned about the end result. So that was the starting point of that, but it didn't actually create any kind of consistent practice in my life. And so I was still kind of stuck with not creating to the extent that I wanted to, and art not being as present as I wanted it to. And one of the things that I wanted to do to bring art back into my sphere was to attend more art events in my local community. And in West Palm Beach, there is quite a thriving artistic community, and there's always a lot going on. So I would go to these art walks and art markets and just kind of check out what the local artists were doing. And once you go to a few of those, you start to see the same people and the same work. And what struck me is that I would see people selling their work, or I remember going to this one particular art walk where different artists had their own spaces, their own studio spaces that they opened up to the public to come and look at their work and sell their work. And I didn't particularly like a lot of it. And I don't like judging whether art is good or bad, but I would think like, this isn't very good, I wouldn't really be into it. And yet I knew that that was my opinion. That is my subjective opinion, that I did not particularly like this art. And yet these people are making art consistently. They're showing up, they're selling their art, they're renting studio spaces. They are thriving in their creative practice. And whether or not I like it or whether or not I think it's good doesn't matter. They're doing it anyway. And that was such an important realization to me because, of course, art is subjective. It's up to the viewer whether or not somebody likes something. Now, of course, there are masters from history, there are present day masters who are exquisite in their practice, and that's a little less subjective. But there are so many kinds of art. Think about music. Think about all the different genres of music that exist, and how an artist might blow up in the music world, and yet there's still so many people who do not like their music. They don't think it's good. And that's because different things, different art forms resonate with different people. And that is the same with drawing. That's the same with painting. That is the same with poetry. That is the same with photography. With any modality of art, are all kinds of creators, and then there's all kinds of receivers. There's all kinds of audiences who want to see that art, who want to put that art up on their wall, who want to listen to that music, whatever it is. And for some reason, it took me a really long time to understand that. And so I thought, what would my life be like if I was willing to make bad art? And that became my challenge. Make bad art and make it every day. And so the first thing I did was sign up for a couple online domestica courses, because I know that when I sign up for a class, that is such a good motivator for me to do the thing, whatever it is. I just really resonate with some kind of classroom setting, whether it's online or in person. And I specifically chose artists who had a unique style that had sort of a whimsical, childlike feel to it. And that gave me permission to create art and explore different styles that felt a little more childish and whimsical. And I cannot tell you the difference that made. It's like I opened a can of worms and I could not put the lid back on, and that's a really good thing. So I grabbed a couple of my sketchbooks, and you'll see on the spine, this sketchbook was from 2013 to 2023. And that is because from 2013 to 2023, I drew in it so occasionally. Sometimes I would have bursts of drawing, like if I was traveling, then I would be adding more to it. But really, it was just like a little sketch here, a little sketch there, as I felt, maybe inspired, but not committed. And then suddenly in 2023, now that I'm looking at the dates, it started in 2022. I gave myself that permission to just make bad art and be completely okay with however that looked. And then suddenly there were pages and pages and pages of drawings. And you see, like, they're not great. They're just things that I found interesting, or animals that I would encounter out in the wild, little objects from my day, little storyboards of my day. And it was so much fun, and it gives me so much pleasure to look at this sketchbook and see all these images, because I remember these moments. I remember this flower with this moth. I remember that. I remember this weekend and what I did that weekend, because I have recorded these moments in my sketchbook, and they're not perfect drawings. They're not exquisite drawings, but I just had so much fun making them. And what it did was it brought a practice of drawing and creating art back into my life. And once I realized how fulfilling that was, and how much it just lit me up and energized me, then I knew that there was no going back. This is who I am. This is important to me. And whether something is good or ugly, it doesn't matter. The point is creating. The point is having this creative outlet. This sketchbook is from 2013 to 2023, 10 years. This sketchbook was from March 2023 to April 2024, 1 year. So quite a difference in terms of how quickly I filled this up. And I slowed down only because then I also started to work on paintings. And I also took a trip to India, and I had a sketchbook with me the whole time I was there, just recording important moments and visuals from my experience. This became a painting that I have up on my wall now. So I'm sharing all of this with you because I just want you to see that once you allow yourself to make bad art, you just make for the joy of it. So my invitation to you is give yourself a little personal challenge of making bad art for the next 2 weeks. Just give yourself 2 weeks and say, for the next 2 weeks, I'm gonna make bad art every day. And it's up to you what that art is. I'm gonna write a bad poem every day. I'm gonna make a piece of bad music every day. I'm gonna dance badly every day. Whatever it is, whatever your creative outlet is, do it and commit to making something that isn't good. Now, I'm not saying you're not allowed to make great and beautiful and wonderful things. There are so many drawings in these sketchbooks that I absolutely adore. And that's because they give me so much pleasure and they bring back so many memories. Just as soon as I look at this, I remember my trip to Ottawa to visit my good friends. So there's so much beauty in giving yourself that freedom because you will bring new life to these experiences that you have and to these memories. So that's my invitation and my challenge to you. Let me know if you accept and what comes of that. I'm really excited to hear. Enjoy.